Van Dyke, could you describe this picture in about one paragraph? Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
That'd be a long paragraph, I think.
Are you ready? Yeah! Here we go.
After 36 years, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang flies up and away on a brand new adventure. Reunited for the first time since the film was launched, are truly scrumptious Caractacus Potts, Jeremy and Jemima, and of course their fine four-fendered friend, the phantasmagorical Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
The whole picture had that atmosphere about it. As hard as it was, we all enjoyed ourselves.
Oh, it's Chitty!
For this young boy, the film was a magical journey.
We had a great time. There's nothing really better you can do with an 8-year-old child except take him to the beach and tell him it's work.
But for his on-screen sister, the memories are more painful.
It had a very adverse effect on my childhood and my family life.
And a young girl who loved Chitty became an anti-road protester.
Life on camp is extremely hard work. It's not very pleasant living on the road.
But happily, for this unlikely named heroine, the film left an enduring legacy.
I love the name Truly Scrumptious. And of course, at my age now, here I am, in my 70s, and people come up and say, oh, truly scrumptious.
I play the part of a unsuccessful inventor with 2 children who lives in a windmill. And we find this car in a junk heap and refurbish it, and it has magical properties.
Oh, you pretty chitty bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang, we love you.
Inspired by a children's story written by James Bond author Ian Fleming, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is a fantasy adventure that includes intrigue, kidnap, a love story, a fairy tale castle in a far-off land, an evil child catcher, and of course, a very happy ending.
I loved the story because I'm a fantasist. Totally. I live on fantasy. I was brought up on MGM musicals. I thought love went on forever and you danced into the sunset and life would be wonderful. And if you were very, very happy, of course, you always burst into song. I mean, that was very important.
Heralded at the time as the largest musical ever made in England, filming started in 1967 when James Bond producer Cubby Broccoli and director Ken Hughes brought over to Pinewood Studios the perfect leading man for a family musical.
I was having such a thrill to be doing children's entertainment. I had always wanted to. I always wanted to be the scarecrow in Wizard of Oz. That was the ideal part for me.
Oh, what a day. You wouldn't believe it. You just would not believe it.
By the mid-1960s, Dick Van Dyke was the all-round family entertainer, thanks to his TV hit, The Dick Van Dyke Show, and his full frontal assault on the Cockney accent in Disney's Mary Poppins.
I'd never met Dick before, Chitty. He was a sweet man, really sweet, and amazing, quiet quality for such a big star. He never pulled any weight or anything like that, or any tantrums.
In the film, Dick Van Dyke plays the role of Caractacus Potts, eccentric inventor, widower, and father to Jeremy and Jemima.
It didn't matter how miserable we were, Dick would cheer us up every time. He would just put on this clowning role and we'd be falling about laughing.
He put a lot of effort into the relationship with Heather and I. He would be the one to say, you know, let's stop now and give the kids a break, or no, I don't think we should do that because it's not safe for the kids, or, you know, I'm not convinced that that will work because of the kids. He was thoroughly professional. The man knew his job inside and out.
Truly scrumptious, you're truly, truly scrumptious. Scrumptious as a cherry peach parfait.
London-born Sally Ann Howes was an established Broadway star when she returned to England to take on the role of aristocratic beauty, Truly Scrumptious.
Probably I was the oldest virgin that had ever been cast. I mean, honestly, I was 36 when I did it. And she was a virginal person, if you know what I mean. It wasn't typecasting, but next question.
I was so in love with Sally Ann Howes. I mean, there she was just an English rose with this fabulous blonde hair, and she was a fairy princess. She was everything wrapped up into one.
This lovely, lonely man, I've only known a day. I look at
You know, the first thing they shot was Sally Ann in the garden in the swing singing Lovely Lonely Man. That was the first shot. I saw that and heard that voice, that gorgeous, rich contralto that she had. And she was so beautiful. I said, this movie's going to work.
he's such a lovely, lonely man.
Jeremy was played by Adrian Hall. 8 years old, he'd been taken to drama classes by his mother in a bid to cure his shyness.
They saw every child in the country that could breathe, and I was just one of the thousands. Turned up for an audition, got through a first audition, which I seem to remember was no more than, oh, look, there's a cute blonde kid. They'd already got Heather, and so they wanted somebody who, you know, at least looked like they were from the same gene pool.
Heather Ripley had already done some stage work in her native Dundee, but when it came to playing Jemima, her Scottish background became something of a problem.
I remember sitting in Cubby Broccoli's office and them saying, oh yes, she's perfect, definitely, she's going to be Jemima. She's perfect except for the accent. And somebody saying, oh, don't worry, we'll get rid of that. And I do remember thinking, how are they going to get rid of it? Was this going to involve some surgery or...
I think you're beautiful. And I like your car.
It just always came out beautiful instead of beautiful.
The most interesting thing about the first day was the panic that my mother was going through. I managed to fall over in our garden at home and put a stake in my knee. Blood everywhere, gore, bone showing, the whole thing. So she just grabbed some plasters and punched the whole thing together and stuck the plasters over and told me not to limp.
They were both so professional for little kids. They never didn't know their lines. They were never late. They were spit spot all the time. As professional kids as I've ever worked with, and I've worked with a lot of children.
It takes hours to set up the cameras and other equipment just to shoot a 10-second scene. And when it's finished, the waiting starts all over again. What to do with a lot of extra time on your hands can be a problem.
The boredom, the endless boredom of sitting around waiting for them to get everything ready, waiting for it to stop raining, waiting for this to happen, waiting for that to happen. It was, Sally saved us, really.
We had a club and we had a tiny little piece of paper which I kept in my wallet forever, and it had passwords and special signals that if we wanted to get away from something, and or if there were too many adults around, and it was adorable. Just the three of us.
Everything off camera really was done to generate the right kind of feeling on camera. I mean, it's taken me years to work that out. Hey, the sun is shining, we're on a beach, we've got 50 people trying to make us happy the whole time. What can go wrong?
You're going too far. No, I'm not. Hang on.
It's taken 36 years, but finally the kids have got the keys to the car. In part 2, Heather and Adrian set out on a tour of their chitty childhood haunts. The casting may have been perfect, the storyline superb, but for many fans there is only one true star of the film, and that's the old car that Caractacus Potts rescues from the scrap heap and transforms into the magical, the phantasmagorical Chitty Bang Bang.
I expected some kind of a prop automobile, but the woodwork, the joinery, it was finished to a T. Gorgeous.
It was just phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Wow.
She's the most beautiful thing I ever saw in my life.
The studios came to a complete standstill. I mean, it was, it wasn't like a new Ferrari or Lamborghini arriving. It was something nobody had ever seen before.
Designer Ken Adam had worked on the Bond films. He'd put the ejector seat in 007's Aston Martin. This time, his job was to create a magical car that everyone would fall in love with, and he knew the film's success depended on it.
To design a car which had to be sexy was a big challenge. My designs were influenced by some of the old Rolls Royces who had ship bodies. And if I remember rightly, we had a shipbuilder to do the actual bodywork.
To see his dream become a reality, Ken looked to racing car boss Alan Mann.
So I'm trying to build a car which is in my imagination, but it's an Edwardian type of car. He didn't give me the name, I don't think, but he gave me a good explanation. And I said, if you could sketch what sort of thing you're looking at. And he very quickly, brilliant artist, sketched it out very, very quickly. I said, if you were to draw it, I'm sure we can make it.
Don't ever do it, will you, my boy?
Right, Grandpa.
You might exhaust yourself.
We discussed the detail of the car, and the only bit of contribution I can make to the artistic part is the bodywork at the back. Because originally he wanted plain mahogany, and I persuaded him to let me do some test pieces with various finishes, including the pale wood in between and the polished bronze fittings, and he went for that.
Oh, you pretty chitty bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang, we love you. And in chitty,
I think we got about 5 cars of various types. It was £60,000. Cheap, weren't they?
the time we spend. Bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang, our fine four-fendered friend. Bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang, our fine four-fendered friend.
37 years have passed since Heather and Adrian chitty-chittied and bang-banged down these country lanes. As children, they used to bounce around in the back. But today, Adrian's driving Chitty for the very first time.
I was absolutely scared to death. The thing is a mile long, you can barely see the end of the bonnet. The steering is not exactly what you're used to these days. You have to really yank it round for it to do anything at all, and then you can feel every crinkle in the road as you go. You might as well throw an anchor out the back to stop the car, but it's got that engine.
You're going too far! No, I'm not! Hang on!
Adrian, Heather and Chitty are out to revisit the film locations that were home to Jeremy and Jemima Potts. And it appears that over the years, very little has changed.
I don't remember the ducks.
I think they were there at that duck house, wasn't it?
The duck house wasn't, and it was all covered in slime.
That's where the car went.
That's where the car went. Now, this is the bit where we run out, isn't it?
Oh yes, that's the wall.
Well, that's a clever thing to do.
Chitty Chitty Bang Bang took over the tiny hamlet of Russell's Water in the summer of 1968. In the film, Truly Scrumptious crashes into the village pond 3 times over, and it's here she meets and falls in love with Jeremy and Jemima's father, Caractacus Potts. All this excitement was captured on home movie by villager Bob Warner.
So this is the bit where the car went in?
Yeah, this is the actual bit where the car went in, and I remember Dick Van Dyke keep going in and having to change his trousers every shot.
Every shot?
Wet, yeah.
Thank you.
Not at all.
Well, the water, it was very mucky bottom on that pond. We had to slog through it, and they have to keep drying me off every time. When I tried to lift her out of the car, I would sink in the mud.
And of course, Dick Van Dyke spent a lot of his time sitting here between shots and being with all the makeup artists.
Well, we had more sunshine in those days.
We had a lot of
didn't we?
sunshine,
Yeah.
and then a lot of the time we used to go around and have a drink around the pub. When the car went in there, I think she's probably getting a bit fed up with it, keep repeating the shoots, and she said, "Oh, sugar." Well, words to that effect.
Little words do come out now and then. I do worry about it. I hope Heather didn't hear.
So did you recognise us after 36 years?
I did. I did, you especially as you drove down that road in that car this morning. You looked just the same, really.
Have you noticed it's making?
It's talking to us. Chitty, 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 bang, bang. Chitty, 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 bang, bang.
Oh, you
pretty chitty bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang, we love you. And our pretty chitty bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang, loves us too. High.
The songwriting Sherman brothers, Richard and Robert, had won 2 Oscars for their work on Mary Poppins before they began turning Ian Fleming's short story into a musical.
Bang, our fine four-fender, chitty chitty bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang, fine four-fender, chitty chitty friends.
Nobody can write like the Sherman brothers. They have written some of the most classic children's songs of all time.
Inspired they may have been, but the Sherman brothers' songs could turn into terrible tongue twisters.
Try singing Chitty Chitty Bang Bang really quickly, but by about the 3rd time, your tongue is getting stuck to the back of your teeth and you can't do it.
We told Adrian, never say chitty chitty, just say chitty chitty. Cheat it. Cheat, don't, chitty chitty. And it sounds like chitty chitty. So it came out real crisp. Oh, you chitty chitty bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang, we love you. And our pretty chitty bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang, loves us too. You could do it like that. But it's very difficult to go, oh, you chitty chitty bang bang, chitty chitty bang. Whoa, the tongue just gets all messed up. But that was a little trick, you know, little things like that.
They found lots of solutions to the problems of working with 2 little brats who couldn't sing. It must have been a problem. It must have been a nightmare for them. I can't imagine the look on their face when they were told, oh, well, yeah, the little boy's great. He's never sung in his life, but he's great.
A gentle breeze from Hushabye Mountain softly blows o'er Lullaby Bay.
My problem, of course, not being a real singer, was the same with Sally as it was with Julie Andrews. They both sing right on pitch. You could tune pianos by their voices. So I was constantly straining to get up there and not sound flat.
A gentle breeze from Hushabye Mountain softly blows o'er Lullaby Bay. Now to sing that really softly like you're singing a lullaby and make it so that the whole world is going to hear it, it has to be absolutely right.
And I'm at the mic trying to do, there is a play, trying to hold the notes out.
It must have been take umpteen, you know, I don't know what take. And he was going, oh, like that. So we saw him suffering in there. We felt sorry for him, really.
And it just got worse. And the more I tried, the worse I got. And I suddenly looked over, and everybody was gone. They all had left, evidently. I walked over there and looked, and they had all slid down to the floor and were in hysterics. Everybody's laying there holding their stomachs, laughing at me and my predicament.
But he did a great job. I mean, the take was great. The one we used, it was wonderful. I won't play it. We'll never play the other takes.
Oh, boy, good for my ego.
He may be critical of his singing, but for a 42-year-old man with no formal training, Dick Van Dyke couldn't half dance.
The old bamboo, you better never bother with the old bamboo. You can have me hat or number shoe, but you better never bother with the old bamboo.
I wouldn't give him anything that he couldn't do. He'd go home and rehearse and maybe not even sleep that night and come back the next day. It was done. Whatever I gave him, he would do it.
Husband and wife choreographers MARC and BREAUX had also come to Chitty after working on Mary Poppins. They knew what Dick Van Dyke was capable of.
The hardest problem that Dick had in that number is I wanted him to start 4 beats after everybody else. And so he just said, what?
On Spanish plains inside the caves, they hide their ruddy sword. What we may do with an old bamboo and everyone applauds.
I was literally doing my own dance routine against those guys. It was very difficult.
The old bamboo, you better never bother with the old bamboo. You can have the hat from your bumper shoe, but you better never bother with the old bamboo.
I remember the last day of shooting that number, we all had to leap over the bamboo sticks, go into a somersault, and finish the number. Out of the 16 dancers or so, every take somebody would miss, jumping over the thing. We got to 23 takes. And I had about 20 years on all of those young dancers. And I just made it. You can see me on the screen going, just barely made it.
You better never bother with the old bamboo.
On the road with Chitty, there's one journey that Adrian and Heather have yet to make. Of all the locations used in the film, it's the windmill near the village of Turville that's the most evocative, for this was the home of the Potts family.
It's really changed though, isn't it? Because there used to be a balcony around there.
That's right, I remember running
a couple
around
of shots,
it.
yeah.
And the
And
barn
then-
was
Barn was
right
here somewhere, yeah? And then there was a track running out across the fields.
That hedge wasn't there, is it?
The hedge wasn't there. Yeah, I think that's pretty much how it was.
It was here at the windmill that Caractacus Potts created his bizarre contraptions. The real-life genius behind these extraordinary devices and an unseen star of the film was cartoonist and inventor Roland Emmett.
I became involved in this film for various reasons. I've built a great number of rather pathetic inventions in the past, and I believe that the sponsors of the film could see some affinity between Caractacus Potts, who of course is Dick Van Dyke, and myself.
My favorite was the egg, the thing that made breakfast. Fascinating. And just by pure luck, as they would roll down the thing onto the table and stop right where we needed them.
Jeremy?
Oh, good.
It was perfectly designed, but we'd had to do a lot of takes with that because sometimes it would throw an egg across the room.
Where was the rocket bit? You know when you was...
The rocket bit must have been just the other side of the shed.
Yeah.
And it went off into the distance. And there was a little bit attached on here so that it all looked like it was one. And then we did the bit with the dog. We must have done on the bank somewhere.
That's right. And Grandpa's privy over there.
Yep, the outside lavvy over there.
Oh, the posh, travelling life, the travelling life for me.
And the lavvy was where you'd always find eccentric old soldier Grandpa Potts, played by Lionel Jeffries.
Forward out, starboard out, push with a capital.
Lionel was a funny, funny man. And he would play my father. He was about 4 years my junior. So I never let him forget that I was younger. I was older than he was, and he was the father.
I got up this morning and I shot an elephant in my pajamas. How we ever got into my pajamas, I shall never know.
Mutton chops he had. He could easily play it.
When poor Grandpa is kidnapped, lavvy and all, by the evil Baron Bombburst, he seems to find it a most amusing way to travel.
Forward out, starboard out, posh with a capital P-O-S-H, posh.
P-O-S-H, posh.
Filmed in a water tank at Pinewood Studios, this was, in reality, a genuinely uncomfortable experience for Lionel Jeffries.
I got bronchopneumonia after doing that bit in the water. It's true. I didn't know about it. I had a bit of a cough, and I went to the doctor, and he said, I think you better have an X-ray. And I went to the X-ray, and he said, about 6 months ago, he said, you were walking around with bronchopneumonia. And we worked it out that was when I was doing it in that tank.
Oh, didn't they warm it up a little or something?
Oh, the posh, travelling life, the travelling life for me. Hop-up-a-ti-top-ti-di-di-di-di-di-di-di.
So how long is it since you've been here?
I haven't been here for 20 years, and the last time I was here was for an interview for a film. I didn't get the job.
Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, originally scheduled for 4 months filming, took well over a year to complete. At Pinewood, time and money were spent in extravagant fashion creating the film's extraordinary set-piece dance routines.
Nobody worried about the money on the film. They were in a gigantic playground and they could have anything they wanted.
Wasn't that a remarkable set, that candy factory? That was my favorite set in the whole movie.
The crew that made the film were all the Bond crew. They'd just come straight off You Only Live Twice, so we had the same props crew, the same lighting crew, the same lighting cameraman and crew. So it just went like clockwork. It's just like a Bond film because it has the same elements. It has the baddie who wants to rule the world. It has the goodie who has fabulous gadgets and inventions with which to stop him. It has the pretty girl with the ridiculous name that describes what she's like. So you've Pussy Galore, you've got Truly Scrumptious. It has all of those elements.
Chitty, of course, miraculously sprouts wings and flies in the pursuit of Grandpa. But it's not so simple for Heather and Adrian when they decide to jet out to America to meet Dick Van Dyke for the first time since the film was made. Whisper this in front of the children, but Chitty doesn't really fly. Sorry.
The Zeppelin.
With my grandpa!
No, not yet, we haven't.
Chasing after the kidnapped Grandpa, Chitty lands in a strange and sinister world, the kingdom of Bulgaria. Filmed in a Bavarian castle, the kingdom is home to Baron Bombast and his child-hating wife, the Baroness.
What's the matter with them? Haven't they seen children before?
As Caractacus soon discovers, Jeremy and Jemima are in mortal danger because this is a land in thrall to the sinister presence of the child catcher.
There are children here somewhere. I can smell them.
In the last 36 years, 80 or 90% of conversations I've started with anybody about the film start with the phrase, I was so scared of that child catcher. I had nightmares about that child catcher.
Lollipop and all free today.
Australian dancer Robert Helpman was 60 years old and one of the world's greatest ballet stars when he had the opportunity of creating one of cinema's most memorable scary characters.
Here we are, children. Come and get your lollipops.
Robert himself was the least scary person I've ever met in my life. He couldn't have been more charming and just wonderful. He really was a nice person. There was nothing scary about him. But the way he moved could be extremely scary.
In one of the adventures these children have, they go to a mythical kingdom which has a very unpleasant old duchess, and she hates children and she employs a child catcher. And that's my part. And I have to disguise myself as ice cream sellers and chocolate sellers and everything to try and catch them. Of course, I never do. They always win.
Go inside my little ears.
The bit that scared me most was when the ice cream stuff all falls off the cage and he cracks the whip and it takes off. You'll notice in the film the wheels actually do come off the ground. He was a bit away with it there. They didn't have to put any glycerine in our eyes, and those were real screams of terror. That was frightening.
And in rehearsing that scene, Robert Helpman had his own moment of terror.
He was coming down the street whipping those horses, and as it went around the corner, it flipped over. And he was sitting up on the front like a stagecoach. And we all thought, this is the end of him. As it went over, he stepped on the side, stepped on the wheel, and stepped off on the curbing. And the thing just went tumbling and falling apart. Never seen anything as graceful in my life. And he was not a young man then. He just, like he was doing a ballet step. And just kind of did this.
Escaping the child catcher, Caractacus and Truly Scrumptious enlist the help of the toy maker played by Benny Hill and enter the castle disguised as puppets, presents for the Baron's birthday.
What do you seek, you people gazing at me?
The only thing that I was really proud of, as a non-dancer, was the doll on the music box. And that was the hardest piece. It was almost mathematical to an nth degree, and it was all done, everything was on a count.
The problem was she was having to move, and it didn't quite match the words to the song. And she found that she could do the pantomime through perfectly or sing the song, but she couldn't do both at the same time. It was this,
What do you seek, you people gazing at me? You see a doll on a music box that's wound by a key. How can you tell? I'm under a spell. I'm waiting for love's first kiss.
She did every single, what do you see? Everything was just, and then the head moves were right on the beat.
I think I did it in one take, and I was so pleased. And I got a great round of applause. I remember that from all the extras, and it was wonderful.
Oh, I had tears in my eyes when she did that number, because she did it so brilliantly.
Thanks to Truly Scrumptious, Caractacus, and of course Chitty, the children are released from the clutches of the Baron and the evil child catcher. Grandpa is saved, and the Potts family fly home. This time, Chitty's needed a little help with her flying, but it's journey's end for Jemima, Jeremy, and Chitty as they drive onto a sunny Los Angeles film lot. It's been over 35 years since the cast were reunited. Sally Ann's already there, and if only Chitty can find her way, Dick Van Dyke's about to get a phantasmagorical surprise.
For up from the ashes, grow the roses of success. Grow the roses, grow the roses, grow the roses of success. Oh yes, grow the roses, those rosy roses. From the ashes of disaster, grow the roses of success.
My God, it's truly scrumptious.
Yes, oh, Caractacus. Oh, how lovely to see you.
You remember me, I'm the lovely, lonely man.
Yes, of course you are, but not anymore.
God, let's not talk about how many years it's been.
Oh, I don't.
Sit
don't
down.
Even think about it. Don't think about it. You've just got to look at our hair.
I just say it's on there. I don't care what color it is. It's on there.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Wait,
That's
I don't
true.
even know where you're living now.
I live in Connecticut.
Oh, you do?
Yes, right on the border outside of New York, 45
Isn't this
minutes.
amazing that we haven't seen each other in all those years?
38 years. 38. Can't believe it. Oh!
Oh, my God. Oh, it's Chitty.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, heavens.
Oh, my.
I know you.
Look at that. Hi, Adrian. Good to see you. Look at this. I really do feel old.
Oh, my God. Oh. Look at these old people. These old people are children.
Thank you so much. You look so well.
Isn't this great?
Goodness, it's great fun. It is absolutely
How did they get it over here? Did they ship it?
Fly.
Huh?
No, it did.
They flew, of course. Fly low, everywhere we go, on chitty,
I
chitty,
knew you'd
weedy
stop.
pen. Bang, bang, chitty, chitty, bang, bang, a fine four-fendered friend. Bang, bang, chitty, chitty, bang, bang, a fine four-fendered friend. Your seats are a feather bed, your seats are a feather bed, you'll turn everybody's head today.
You're more than spectacular, to use the vernacular.
You wicked.
No, I went wrong. It's gone wrong. Who's got the script? Who's got the script?
I don't know.
How could we have forgotten those words so quickly?
Well, I know. It took me 14 months to get them out of my head again, too. Isn't that beautiful? I think I may be too old to get into it.
No way.
Come on, I'll take you there. Come on, we'll go round.
Okay. You'll have to give me a great big push from the bottom. How did we get in and out of this so easily?
I don't. Well, we were young,
Yeah.
Sally. I'll tell you one thing, it's not sprung very well. It was a bumpy ride.
Oh, I thought you were talking about me. Hang on.
Well, none of
I
us
certainly
have sprung
couldn't
very
get
well,
in very well here. Okay, I'm in. Lovely. 68 years later, I'm in the car.
Oh, it can't be.
No, I can't.
No, really,
it's lovely.
it doesn't seem that long ago to me.
No, it
I mean, I
doesn't.
can't believe that you guys are grown up. You're still little kids to me.
Everybody calls us the children.
we still
Wherever
get
we
called
go,
the
they say,
children.
can
You're
we get the
still the
children out to shoot
Yes,
now?
absolutely. I mean,
So
it is-
what's been happening with you guys?
Well, I'm busy. I work at a drama school.
You do?
Yes.
Do you teach?
Not. I sit behind a desk. I tell other people to go and teach.
Oh, I see. I
which
thought
is,
maybe you taught them everything you learned working with Sally
of
and Dick.
course. Well, I do that as well, naturally.
I went back to the theatre.
What'd you do?
Oh, I can't remember that long ago, thank goodness, but I haven't stopped in the theatre. And I'm married. I'm married now 30 years.
30 years?
Yes,
Oh,
and
my God.
very happy. And it's wonderful.
Oh, that's great.
Yes, finally settled down. Truly scrumptious, settled down.
Did you quit show business after this? Or
Oh,
did you
absolutely. Put me off for years.
Today, Heather is happy to look back on the film with her fellow cast members, but for the little girl from Dundee, filming Chitty was not a fairy tale, and Heather's had to come to terms with some painful memories from the time spent on the set of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Oh, the first couple of months were easy. They were great. It wasn't until about the first 6 months that the novelty had completely worn off and I began to get sick to the back teeth of it.
I was very aware that Heather was missing her father. I think she was very devoted to her father. I remember her wanting him to be there and talking about him.
My mother and I lived in a flat in Clapham Common, and the rest of my family and friends obviously stayed in Dundee, hundreds of miles away, and I never saw them for 14 months. I think I got to visit them twice. And I got so desperate that I noticed that on the other side of the sort of square, there was a window that I'd seen a little girl. Obviously, that was her bedroom. And I got huge big sheets of paper and wrote, "Please will you be my friend?" and put them up at my window. And she saw them and started answering. And her name was Ilse Marston. I'll never forget her name. She was the only other child that I had to play with. And she eventually came round to the flat and finally I had a friend.
I didn't realize you were so alone during that time. I didn't. You were away from home, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But
You didn't have anybody to play with.
No. Heather always had that little fragile quality that, you know, you wanted to take care of her.
Yeah.
You still do, actually.
I would have just been in tears the whole time if you hadn't looked after us so well, because I was so miserable away from my dad, but I mean, you just kept us going. My relationship with the rest of my family never recovered from that strain. When we went back, there was a divorce, because my father had also had an affair while we were away. And shortly after that, my mother remarried and we moved to Ireland.
Adrian's life was considerably easier. Living close to Pinewood, he'd leave the studio gates and return to the everyday family routine.
I had no trouble at all at the end of the day. I'd go home, I'd get my bike out the garage and I'd go off and play, and my mother would run down the road screaming, "Don't fall over, don't fall over, don't fall on a stake and put a hole in your leg again." And I had no trouble at all. Working at Pinewood Studios is an experience just in itself, no matter what the film is you're doing, because of the kind of environment it is and the kind of people that are there. And I felt genuinely sad to go home at the end of the day, because it's a wonderland, it's a playland.
Adrian Hall was only 9 years old when the film was released. He went on to stage school and then worked primarily in the theatre, where he met his wife Barbara. Then, in his late 20s, he took on a new role, bringing on the next generation of stage and screen performers.
My job now is head of production at GSA Conservatoire in Guildford. And we're a fairly traditional drama school. We teach actors, we teach musical theatre performers, and we teach stage managers and technicians. This is where we do all the sound recording for the shows, where we do all the TV and radio work. And here's Ben doing some camera work. I came out of drama school and I had no credibility as a teenager. I had credibility as a child actor. And for a long time I used to not put the film on my CV. And I used to tell my agent, don't mention the film, because they will think I'm a child actor and I'm not anymore. I'm a grown-up actor, and it was probably just, ego on my part. And then I was very lucky and got a long run in a play in the West End, and I think that's probably what did it. Once I'd got my credibility as an adult actor, it was okay to reintroduce the film into my life in that sense. Everybody knows my background. It usually takes about 2 weeks from me starting any job to everybody knowing. That's okay. I can put up with the singing and I can put up with the jokes and everything. It all disappears after about 3 or 4 weeks, unless there's a situation that they want to manipulate deliberately to make me look terribly embarrassed, in which case then it'll come out again.
And Adrian isn't the only one outed as a child from Chitty, as Heather Ripley discovered when she turned off the tarmac and tuned in to the protest movement.
They just thought it was hysterically funny that this mad protester was actually this little girl in a film about a car.
More from the barricades after the break. For over 30 years, Heather Ripley tried to forget about Jemima and Chitty. After a variety of jobs, she found a new purpose in life, joining the protest movement. By 1999, Heather was living in a peace camp beside the nuclear submarine base at Faslane.
What's out there? One nuclear warhead on one Trident sub can wipe out Glasgow. Why? I mean, what use is it? Life was very, very hard. We were living in what we call benders in the woods, but the novelty pretty quickly wore off. It's not a comfortable existence, and you have to be really dedicated to keep it together here. But you know, it's been going for 17 years, and I think that alone shows just how strong people feel about the place. It's a really scary thought to you know, go over there in a tent and sort of put yourself in the path of the bulldozer. And I thought, well, they're just going to clear me out of the way. And I thought, but I'm not just anyone. I was the little girl in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Surely I can get the media interested in this enough to highlight the cause. I get really angry because it really hurts to see my land damaged and wounded and desecrated by it.
Five years on, Heather has left the peace camps and is now, for the first time since Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, thinking again about an acting career. She's back in Dundee, shooting a low-budget short film.
Just relax and take a seat. I think now I'm older, I have the confidence to do it. I think I still have the talent to do it. I'm told I'm still a very good actress. It's very much the same. It's mostly hanging around waiting for things to happen or, you know, things to be set up. What the hell is my first line? It is. Why do you want this job?
I need a chance, an opportunity.
I would compare it to the first time I got on a horse after 20 years of not riding. I was a bit nervous at first, but as soon as I got on the horse, I remembered how easy it was.
And cut, thank you. Maybe you would like to hear about the rest of my day.
At the age of 78, Dick Van Dyke can look back on a long film and TV career that ended with a 10-year run on TV series Diagnosis Murder. He played physician and part-time detective Dr. Mark Sloan, with his son Barry co-starring.
The longest I ever held a job in my entire life. It went something like 10 years. Isn't that funny? And of course I carried nepotism to its ultimate extreme by having my entire family on it.
In 1974, Dick had starred in a TV film the morning after, about an alcoholic hitting the skids. What surprised many was how the performance drew upon his own personal experience.
I thought I was a social drinker. You know, I never drank at work or anything like that, never had any trouble, but I'd go home and have my martinis. And it became, you know, more and more, and I found out I couldn't quit, and by 1970 and 71, I realized I had a problem.
I wonder how that could have happened.
There was no hint. There was nothing to suggest that this was a man who couldn't do his job. And normally you would expect somebody who has that kind of problem to not turn up, to not be able to work on any given day. And I don't remember that ever happening.
Oh, yes, I did some wonderful drinking with Lionel and our cast. We'd go out afterwards, you know. But it never affected my work particularly. But it got out of hand.
No, chitty chitty bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang, we've been bad for...
So what of Chitty herself these last 35 years? She's been keeping busy, and despite appearances, she's licensed, she's got her road tax and her MOT, and is living a pampered existence in Stratford-upon-Avon.
I'm working on Chitty nearly every day, going to various shows, and it takes quite a lot of energy, and also car polish, aluminium polish, brass polish, copper polish, and all those things mount up to quite a bit, and I use quite a gallonage over the years. Now the number plate is Gen 11. Gen 11 is Latin for Geni, magical being, and in this sense, magical motor car. It's phantasmagorical. There's no getting away from that, and I am very proud to be owner of this motor car.
Chitty's barely hit middle age, but some of the other stars of the film are sadly no longer with us. The child catcher, Sir Robert Helpman, died in Sydney, Australia in 1986. Also gone are Gert Frobe, who played Baron Bombburst, and the toy maker, Benny Hill.
Gentle breeze from Hushabye Mountain, softly blows o'er Lullaby Bay.
Very good.
It fills the sails of boats that are waiting to sail your troubles away.
Close your eyes on Hushabye Mountain.
Sally Ann Howes enjoyed a successful stage career on both Broadway and London's West End, but it's for her role as truly scrumptious that she's most fondly remembered.
I've had the most enchanting time with this film. Everybody wants to know about Chitty, Chitty, Bang, Bang. Now, nobody could have seen me in My Fair Lady or King and I or any of the other shows that I've done. But this is remembered, and it's very exciting to have it, even if it's just one thing that's remembered. It's rather nice.
How do you sum up something that's still going 36 years later?
Indestructible?
Yes, indestructible.
3 generations can all sit and watch that film
Watch
together.
it together, which is rare.
Very rare.
There's not much around.
You can meet a kid of 7 now, and they know all the words, and they sing all the songs.
That's true.
Which means that and they say it's my favourite movie.
Well, thank you, children. All these wonderful things, they're very precious.
I spent approximately 30 years trying to forget all about it, but in the past 6 years, I've realised what an incredible effect it has on people's lives.
I have nothing but sort of thanks for how I started and where I've got to.
It's been absolutely thrilling to me that it's been a classic that's lasted forever.
Great, great time shooting that movie, and I'm so happy that it turned out to be kind of a perennial.
My poor friend, Chitty Chitty friend.
Animated Animal Thoughts next here on ITV1 with Creature Comforts. And then at 4:35, an English village, an actress and a murder. Angela Lansbury takes on the role of Miss Marple in The Mirror Cracked.